حي على الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر حي على الصلاة.
I want to have the chance, unhindered, to teach the time and what must be done to every black man, woman, and child in America. And after we teach that subject, then we should take a vote as to how many of us want to stay with our open enemy or how many of us want to be separated from them in a land of our own. The promise of God is a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, milk means you have animal husbandry. Honey means you have bees that are pollinating flowers. You have vegetation. You have land that is fertile, land that is productive. What must be done?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I bear witness there is no God but Allah. Muhammad is his messenger. And on behalf of Honorable Farrakhan, I'd like to just to thank all of you for coming out today. And I want to introduce a person that don't need no introduction, really. Our sister, Dr. Ava Muhammad. Honorable Farrakhan have appointed her first. I want you to know, in this city, she was the first sister minister over a major mosque as well as a region in the country. Now, that's history. Praise be to Allah. And she's the national spokesperson for the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan is putting women out front, letting you know. See? So all that sexism stuff, that's out the door. Now, Dr. Sister Ava Muhammad is my sister, and I want to just let the whole... I want you to know that. Praise you, God, so they don't want you to know that. And your husband knows that. So I want to make sure he knows that. So I want to introduce to some and present to others, Dr. Sister Ava Muhammad. Praise you.
Thank you so much. In the most holy name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah. I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant. And I greet all of my brothers and sisters in the words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. Oh, it's such an extreme pleasure and honor to be here at the legendary Muhammad Mosque number 15 in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the 16th Town Hall meeting. They began in June of 2018, and then that was the first one was in Birmingham, Alabama. The Southern Regional Headquarters laboring staff came out in full support. There was a caravan that traveled from Atlanta, Georgia to Birmingham, Alabama to support the first town hall meeting on the subject of separation in preparation for the vote among the 40 to 60 million black people who are descendants of slaves in America. On that same weekend, which I think was June 30th, Brother Sharrieff, there had been a plan by Congresswoman Maxine Waters to visit Birmingham. She canceled her appearance because in the wake of some criticisms that she made of Donald J. Trump, there were numerous threats made against her life from his base. But Brother Student Minister Abdul Sharrieff Muhammad, the laborers, believers of Muhammad Mosque 15 said, we're not concerned about any threats. We're going to escort and secure Student Minister Ava Muhammad, and we're going to hold this town hall meeting. And we did, and it was the first one, and it was exceedingly successful at the Civil Rights Institute. So we had that first one, and then we did not hold the second one until September of 2018. So in effect, there have been 16 town hall meetings in a 9-month period. We are, during the course of these town hall meetings, with the question, should blacks consider separation? We are extracting out of the 40 to 60 million a sampling to get a picture of how many people wish to answer the question posed by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that you just saw on that clip, which is how many want to stay with the open enemy and how many want a separate state or territory of our own. So we are actually living in the book of Numbers, in the Bible. We, the true children of Israel, that was prophetic. We are the actuality. We have, through the coming of Master Prophet Muhammad, Allah in person, been delivered up out from under our slave master. We have been delivered through the truth of the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad over the past 90 years, been delivered. The time of Satan is up. And now the mercy of Allah in our midst, he who is backed by the two, is standing ready to lead us in our exodus. It is a blessing, beloved, to be alive at this time, that God has come in fulfillment of his promise to Abraham in the book of Genesis. And now we stand poised to move. We need to know who's ready to go. We are not taking anybody kicking and screaming. Tragically, we have lost some of our people. They are casualties of this 450 years of oppression, and they do not know themselves. They have not returned to themselves, but they have been taught knowledge of themselves. So this is an informed decision that we are making. Black people and white people here and around the globe now know, due to the work of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan over 64 years, they know the truth. So they are knowingly accepting or rejecting the truth. And those who reject it, we say, well, that is your choice. But we are looking for those who are ready to obey God's will and ready to go into a land that we have earned. We have earned territory in these United States, on this continent that we are entitled to, where we may complete the preparation of ourselves before we completely return to our original land. So may Allah bless us all with love and the light of understanding. This is not a time of trying to persuade anybody. This is a time of coming together to begin to think through the implementation of the plan for separation from the enemies of God and the enemies of our people. We thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the beneficent and merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is his messenger. I greet you all in our greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. We're going to move now forward in our meeting. I'm Sister Rona Muhammad. You'll hear from me a little bit later on. But right now, I would like to bring up our brother Nasir Muhammad, who's going to give us a brief history of Black Atlanta. All right? Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, most merciful, I bear witness there's no God but Allah. I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger, and I bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is our divine reminder in our midst. Assalamu alaikum. I'm going to recognize some people that are in the audience. I thank the regional laborers for the opportunity to be before you. Thank the national spokesperson for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, Sister Minister Ava. Thank our brother who's on the panel as well for being here. Let's give them a round of applause. In the audience is none other than one of my beloved heroes in the Nation of Islam and even in our history, Brother Wahid Muhammad. Please recognize. And beside him, we have our National Secretary coming from Chicago, Brother Burvey Muhammad. Please recognize him. Now, I'm keeping order with the time that I've been allotted. It's actually not going to be just Atlanta's history. It's going to be a focus on the Nation of Islam history in Atlanta with those outside of the Nation of Islam cooperating and participating. Now, most of us in Atlanta have the Nation of Islam starting in 1955, right? Actually, I'm going to read what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said because he's not in agreement with 1955. This is out of his writings. I am not of myself. I did not take this mission of myself. It is from Almighty God, as the world knows. I have suffered, have ran, and have tried to escape the evil intentions of hypocrites too. I landed up in the arm of the chief enemy and was sent to the federal penitentiary to keep from having the freedom to preach to our people the truth in those days. I suffered being deprived of my own, being in the midst of my own family and with my own wife for 7 long years. All, this is very important, all up and down the East Coast, I went for 7 years. From Atlanta to Boston, 2 very important cities in the Nation of Islam, and back and forth. Those people down there, they can tell you, I don't have to plead to you for any representation. I don't have to plead to you to be a witness of me. Allah is sufficient. He is sufficient. The reason why this is so important in history is because when you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, Malcolm makes mention in there that he did not establish Mosque number 15. You could go to the chapter called Minister Malcolm in his autobiography. He talks about, I'm going to come back to what the Most Honorable Muhammad just said. He talks about the first mosque meeting, setting up that meeting. Minister James, who the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan recently talked about, who came out of Boston. Do you know what that first Muhammad mosque was? It was at Hanley Funeral Home on Sweet Auburn Avenue. Right across Sweet Auburn Avenue, there's Bell Street. That's the funeral home that Malcolm is talking about in his autobiography. Now, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, if you go back and study any minister that was in those days, when he sent them to a city to capture that city, they left with a list of people to see when they got to that city. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad already had followers in Atlanta between 1935 and 1942. So when Brother James comes from Boston to Atlanta from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he comes with a list of people that are already here that believe. And he takes that list and he goes to work with that list, and they begin to help establish a mosque here. Malcolm X was the person that came and gave structure to the early beginning of these mosques. You have to give him credit for being a part of that, but you can't say he found something when the Most Honorable Muhammad already had followers. So we have to be clear with that. I'm sorry. The correct name for our beautiful brother secretary, Brother Saad Muhammad. Please recognize him again with the correct name. Now, that's 1955, Minister James X. I'm not going to touch on the Nation of Islam in Atlanta going and get the brothers out of the hood and out of the dumpster and all of that. No, I'm going to focus on something that they don't talk about. Everything I'm going to focus on is all scholarship. People that the Nation of Islam brought in of scholarship, which started with Brother James in 1955. There was a man at Atlanta University Center, his name is C. Eric Lincoln. Anything that Reverend Dr. C. Eric Lincoln has written, you should study. he was an advocate for our nation. In his archives at the Atlanta University, it don't cost you anything to go in there and read our history. But it was a student that was a follower of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad that sparked Dr. Lincoln's interest in the Nation of Islam, which catapulted him into one of the scholars of his time in terms of Nation of Islam's history. So it was a brother in the ranks that was a student there. Now, Minister James spoke 5 languages. He was a graduate of Johnson Smith University. So it wasn't somebody that, he was a musical genius, as the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan explained to us. But Minister James, unfortunately, was not able to be successful in his ministry. We're not going to go into all of that. But Minister James ends up abandoning his post. What does the most honorable Elijah Muhammad do? He has a man by the name of Minister Jeremiah X. He wasn't Shabazz at the time. Jeremiah X. Minister Jeremiah is like the man you see on the side of the road that busts all the concrete up before they start building. So Minister Jeremiah comes to Atlanta. He lays a strong foundation for those who follow him. As a matter of fact, family, Minister Jeremiah was the person who was closest to Dr. King as a Muslim. Dr. King, if you go to you go to Atlanta University, go through Dr. King's papers, you will find that Dr. King said, not me, he said, that Minister Jeremiah was a brother that he did not have. Minister Jeremiah and Reverend Ralph David Abernathy were like brothers too. Everywhere in the South, Minister Jeremiah was right with the civil rights movement. At the March on Washington, there's only one man, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, gave permission to go to the March on Washington. You know who that was? Minister Jeremiah. He was a Southern Regional Minister, he was the local representative, and he was a writer for Muhammad Speaks. And guess where his office was? His office was on Martin Luther King Jr. Street, which was Hunter Street that time, at a place called Pascal's. Pascal's is where the writer named Brother Heru 4X. Anybody ever heard of Benny Andrews, the great artist? Okay. Look that up when you get home. Benny Andrews, one of the most prolific black artists during the Harlem Renaissance and all. He's from Georgia. His family is still here. Some of the family members are still here in Georgia. Well, Brother Heru 4X Andrews was one of the greatest writers in Muhammad Speaks in terms of local. He was right here in Atlanta with Minister Jeremiah. Brother Harold, there was no office. The office was Pascal's. So when our people were raped, beat, mutilated in the jails in the Mississippi, Alabama, the Muslims brought them all the way to Pascal so they could tell their stories and be comfortable because they couldn't do it in the cotton fields in those cities. Brother Harold's office was right there where that good southern chicken was being cooked. He was interviewing for Muhammad Speaks. And if you go through any of the Muhammad Speaks, you will see that Brother Harold was akin to brother that we lost, the final call editor-in-chief. Anybody know his name? That's right, Brother Abdul Wali. If you look at their history, it's very comparison in terms of their education, in terms of their family background. Both families were in the movement. Those are martyrs of our nation. Now, he actually continued to work, and then in 75, when Imam comes on the scene and they set up the Bilalian News, he's now a bureau reporter for the Bilalian. And guess what? He's a minister in Little Rock. They move him from Atlanta to Little Rock, and he dies in an accident going to pick up children for a summer program in Atlanta. A lot of stuff around that accident, but we won't go into all of that. Now, Minister Jeremiah, back to him and his wife, Sister Elizabeth, who I had an opportunity to have a great conversation with. They were catalysts. Okay, yes, sir. They were catalysts in their work right here in Atlanta. I'm going to wrap it up. And Minister Jeremiah was so well known in the civil rights movement, the Nation of Islam, Muhammad Speaks, covered the civil rights movement more than any newspaper in the world. So the brother now, Congressman John Lewis used to write letters to try to get to Chicago to talk to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Today he won't even sit with Honorable Louis Farrakhan. But when you know the history, you can call him out on that. Minister Jeremiah and him are like brothers. Even to this day, he'll weep and start crying. You mentioned Minister Jeremiah. Now, after Minister Jeremiah, we have Minister Leroy and a person who we don't give credit to, who did a great work in Atlanta, Hulan Shaw, Yahweh Ben Yahweh. He did a great work. You cannot deny the work that people put in right here in Atlanta. Regardless of what his fault was, he did great work. They didn't get the first business when Minister Rockman comes on the scene. They had that stuff going on before that. And guess where the Nation of Islam first began working hard at? Buttermilk Bottom. Etta James got her ex in Buttermilk Bottom. Buttermilk Bottom. Oh, you know where Civic Center is, right? Some people looking because they're not from here. The Civic Center area. Down from 4th Ward, in the old 4th Ward, the bottom of the old 4th Ward, north of the old 4th Ward. So, Hulan Shaw, Yahweh Ben Yahweh. As a matter of fact, the Nation of Islam ministers lived in the same community with Daddy King, Collier Heights. Yahweh Ben Yahweh didn't live in no projects. He owned a property in Collier Heights. That's where the Nation of Islam followers work. That's where the most unbiased representatives work. Now, the reason why that's important is this. 1965, of course, Malcolm was assassinated. There's a situation in Atlanta that happens too. Mother Clara's father is one of the oldest FOI in the ranks. He lives with Minister Jeremiah. He dies. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad decided not to come to Atlanta. Mother Clara comes because the climate dealing with that situation. Same kind of situation with the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and his mother too. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Mother Clara comes because her sister is a member of the nation in the ranks, Sister Rosa Muhammad. So lives in the old 4th Ward, right around the corner from Dr. Kingdom home. So he's buried at Southview Cemetery. Same cemetery where King, same cemetery where Bishop Henry McNeil Turner. Most of the great ones are buried at Southview Cemetery in terms of the liberation struggle. They're buried at Southview, most of them. There's some buried at others, but most of them are there. And he's buried there in an unmarked grave. By the grace of Allah, I found that out a couple years ago. And we went to work with the Muhammad family, and he has a marker now. That marker came about by people, Jewish people gave money, homeless people gave money, agnostics gave money, Muslims gave money, Christians gave, we raised money and we made it happen. But we not knowing that history and knowing a brother who was 90-something years old and buried in that grave and not having a marker. Okay, my minutes, got one more thing to say. This is, I'm not going into when Minister Rockman comes because that's documented. But after 1965, between 65 and 75, you do your homework on it. From the time Malcolm X is murdered, unfortunately, until the time the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad depart, that period is the greatest explosion of economic development in the history of Black America. You can go and look up Marcus Garvey, you can go look up all of them. I'm talking about land purchase. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was negotiating for 1 million acres of land at the time he left us. I got to add, for 1 million. The hospital at the farm in in Georgia, they had apples. They had a fundraiser for apples that went across the country. And you know the brother Joe Tex came to Atlanta, did a performance and sold out. Last thing, remember this date if you don't remember nothing I said. September the 11th, 1960 is one of the most important days in Atlanta's history. That's the only time the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad ever gave a public address in Atlanta. You ever heard of WERD? That's a Black-owned radio station, the first Black-owned radio station in the country with Black-owned and Black programming. The radio station carried the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad's message. And he spoke at the Magnolia Ballroom, right around the corner from where Martin Luther King Jr. family grew up at. Sunset and Magnolia. The man who owned it was B.B. Beeman. The police officers came to Mr. Beeman and told Mr. Beeman that they wanted to bug and they wanted to get bug the ballroom and hear what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. They was not going to let the Muslims have that meeting. They were trying to do everything to stop the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad from speaking. The Ku Klux Klan said they were coming through the neighborhood. Muslims came from everywhere. I'm talking about everywhere. They couldn't stay at hotels, so they stayed in the community right there in the bluff. okay? The most honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X comes, and all Minister Farrakhan, Malcolm X, all of them come. Minister Farrakhan is actually on Broadway doing the play. He comes. They all are here. The white police has the room bugged, but the brother who is Jesse Blade, the first black CPA in the state of Georgia, he permitted his radio station, WRED, to allow the most honorable Elijah Muhammad voice to be heard in every state in the South. And from that point to the point Minister Rockman was no longer in a position as the minister because of the change that took place, mosque and study groups were flourishing in the South. The greatest captain, I'm going to say this, I'm getting off it. The greatest captain who is not talked about, he's just as great as Yusuf Shaw, he's just as great as all the great ones. And you should remember this name, Captain Lawson X. Every one of these administrations benefited from his expertise as a leader. This man had over 650 FOI paid in full in the southern region. That ain't never happened. 650 men, we got the documentation on payroll. And he never missed a payroll like Minister Rockman never missed one with the school. This is the explosion of Nation of Islam economic development. From the time Malcolm X get the bullet to the time the most honorable Elijah Muhammad depart. Look it up, 65 to 75. It has never been touched by no leader. And the thing that separates us from anybody else is that our man was taught directly by God. Thank you. With that said, we're going to go ahead and move forward in the meeting and bring up a fireball that's going to take us into the next part of the phase of the program, and that is our brother Desmond Muhammad. Give it up for him.
Had the opportunity to meet in person your student minister, the Southern Regional, right? Minister who has a long history. I don't need to tell you who he is. His work has definitely spoke for himself, and when you have work, you don't need to talk, right? The minister said, time for talk is over. He told us that out of his mouth to our ears. And this brother, I heard a brother say that the brother doesn't let the period or exclamation mark hit the sentence before he's already up and out and working. And I bear witness to that. I've seen that. So I'm very honored to move forward in the meeting. We now have an introductory of our panelists. You've already met and been introduced to our the national spokesperson of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, with Minister Sister Dr. Ava Muhammad. Right? But now I'm going to bring up our brother, student minister, Brother Abdul Sharrieff Muhammad, and he's going to just discuss and introduce himself to those who are on Facebook and who are here in our audience who may not be familiar. And then he's going to bring me back up, and then I'm going to introduce our next panelist, and he's going to introduce himself to you, and then I'm going to come back up, and then we're going to then move forward in the Q&A, which is the real reason why we're here. We want to hear from the community. The question at hand is, should blacks consider separation? We know the answer to that, however, it still should be addressed and discussed, because the next phase is our physical separation, okay? So I want to remind everyone, you were handed note cards when you came in. I would like for you to please use those note cards to ask questions, and there are brothers and sisters on both sides that are prepared to take those cards, and then those are the questions that I'm going to be presenting to the panelists. So please write neatly and have thought-provoking questions so that we can really get a great discussion going. So at this time, without further ado, I'm going to bring up student minister, Brother Abdul Sharrieff Muhammad.
I am student minister Abdul Sharrieff Muhammad, representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for the Southern Region. I don't have much to say. I'm just a doer of work. So may Allah bless you all. I understand.
Praise be to Allah. So I know y'all said, what is she doing over there? Like, what is she doing? Well, he said, I'm not going to be but a minute. So I'm like, do I go now? Do I stay? So praise be to Allah. Moving right along. The next brother here who's on our panel is a brother that we are all blessed to have here. The brother is going to do a brief introduction, about 5 minutes. As you know, I'm a stickler for time, right? He's going to give a 5-minute address, and then we're going to move to the Q&A. So I bring up our beloved brother, Brother Heru Ranesi-El. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. I rise giving all praises to the great God of the universe, known affection to the Moorish Americans as Allah. Allah is the author, the creator, the governor of the worlds, the almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible. All praises are due to Allah.
Yes,
I extend the highest of honors to his holy and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America.
Yes,
I
sir.
extend high honors as well to his forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who did indeed warn and stir up the nations.
Yes,
I
sir.
give honors to the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, a messenger of Allah, and the reason why many of you are here today. And allowed us to be in this house that he erected so many years ago.
Yes, sir.
I give honors to his representative, the most honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yes,
give
sir.
honors to the Southeastern Regional Minister, Brother Sharrieff Muhammad, and Sister Dr. Ava Muhammad. It's a blessing to be on this most august panel. And once again, I greet you in the universal greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, sir.
As I stated, I'm here to represent. Praise be to Allah. It is truly an honor to be here, Muhammad's Miles 15. It's been quite a while since I've been here. The last time I was here, I came to hear my mentor, from when I was a child, Student Minister James Muhammad, who passed, I think it was last year, the year before, who was the Student Minister of Atlantic City Mosque in New Jersey. But I give honors to the Nation of Islam because you all always had an open door policy with members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and we have the same.
Yes, sir.
One thing, I'd like to speak on is the fact that, when people hear, even the name of the Moors, all right, people most usually reference the era of 711 AD when the Moors conquered Spain, right? However, most people think about that in perspective of just one group of people that went in there and did that. It's not true. It was hundreds of clans and tribes that came together to accomplish that one goal, all right? What I'm here to say today is that we need all of our people on deck to pull off what we have to pull off in this country.
Yes, sir.
We can't afford to write anyone off.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
All of the religious controversy that we suffer from relative to ideological differences and doctrinal disputes and so on and so forth, all of that is a conglomeration presented to us as a form of European psychology, right?
Come on,
because
come on.
we've always been a divine people, but historically we've had different customs with how we approach Allah.
Come on.
Right?
Come on.
Prophet Noble Drew Ali teaches us that every nation has a name for Allah, and they name the side of Allah that they see. All right?
Yes, sir.
So, in amongst the Moorish cultures, amongst the Asiatic cultures, we may refer to him as Allah. In Nigeria, they might refer to him as Olodumare. They have various different names to address the one creator, but we always address one creator.
Yes, sir.
On the topic of separation, as a divine people, we were always called to be a holy people. Right? The Europeans have taken the word holy and made it a condescending and self-righteous term. When someone says, I'm holier because I go to church on Sunday. I'm holy because I pay my tithes. But holy actually means to be set apart. The essence of the word holy is separation. To separate yourself from the folly that the world is presented to you. And in the annals of history, because Islam has no birth record, it has no birth date, in the annals of history, you can never show me a period of time where we've been a secular people.
Yes, sir.
This is absolutely the worst time that you've seen our people, and that's because we've bought into that madness of being a secular people.
Yes,
right?
sir.
The
Yes,
young
sir.
people have a phrase where they say, I'm just trying to chase the bag. For us, let me translate that. The bag is all they're concerned about is that money. As though the money in and of itself is going to free you and better your circumstance. But if you're a slave with money, it's still a slave.
Right, come on now. Come on.
And especially if you don't know how to convert that into something that's beneficial for your people.
Yes, sir.
Right? Prophet Noble Drew Ali taught us that those principles under the phrase of free national standards and principles. right? He said gold and finance and all that doesn't make the man. You know, the wealth belongs to the citizens, but that wealth doesn't make you. It's your free national standards and principles that make a man and a nation. All right?
Yes,
so
sir.
we have to get back to the period of time and knowing exactly who we are and whose we are.
Yes, sir.
All right? And, you know, again, we have to get back to the period of time where we care about one another. Because without that caring for one another, it's impossible to love one another. Right? Again, giving honors to our brothers and sisters in the Nation of Islam, FOI, MGT, because again, the level of hospitality that you all represent, you know, it kind of makes everybody have to step up a little bit. You know,
Go ahead.
we're commanded to do certain things in the Moorish Science Temple of America to treat. The Prophet Noble Raleigh teaches us. He says that manners are the path to good old age, right? So the the hearing of yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. These are qualities of civilized people. You see?
Yes, sir.
I had an event at my, I own a barbershop. I own a barbershop on Cleveland Avenue, and we had an event there on Thursday called Clippers and Cops. And what we did, we invited the police, the Atlanta representatives from the Atlanta Police Department out, and we invited the community out, to address the police in terms of accountability, right?
Yes, sir.
The sad part about it is, as we sat back and listened to, to our people have difficulties addressing their concerns because they're consumed by their passions and emotions, right? Much of the work that we all have to do is to teach our people how to become reasonable again, to detach the emotion and deal with the fact at issue.
Yes, sir.
See? So that's the work we have to do. And a lot of that comes from our lifestyle. It's how we're living, what we're eating, what we're thinking. Are you fasting? Are you praying? Are you meditating? Because this vessel we're in, if you don't do certain things, you can't access Allah and universal law.
Yes, sir.
You see what I'm saying? You buy a brand new car, it comes with an owner's manual, right?
Yes, sir.
Everything, 3 months, 3,000 miles, you gotta change oil. Some of them you have to take them to the dealer. You can't take them to Joe Blow, the shade tree mechanic, doing that type of stuff because it violates your warranty.
Yes, sir.
All right? Same thing. Your body has a warranty. You have to stay in line with universal law. You have to stay in line with Allah. And what you're called to do, if you violate that, you will suffer the wrath of Allah. And like my grandmama used to tell me, your arms are too short to box with God. All right?
That's
so,
right. Yes,
again, just in terms of reminding you, brothers and sisters, that here in the Nation of Islam, you're not alone in rallying our people to do what we have to do. All of the Moorish Americans, when we hear the call of unity, we'll always be present.
Yes,
I
sir.
in Mount Marion, when Minister Farrakhan speaks, when the camera pans, you always see some feathers in the room.
Yes, sir.
And that's not by design, because we are for the uniting of our people, wherever we may be found.
That's what it's talking about. Yes, sir.
Okay, and with that, I'm going to yield because Sister Moderator gave me a time limit, and I have my own stopwatch. 7 minutes, and I gave 5, so I'm 2 minutes over. So with that, I yield the remainder of my time. I leave you as I greeted you in peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Hey, Islam, sir. Walaikum salam, man.
Brother, don't let that 2 minutes. It's okay. You'll be invited back. No, you'll be invited back. All right. So we're going to move forward in the Q&A portion of our meeting. I do have some questions already. And if at any time anyone has a question, please feel free to bring them up. I'm going to take the questions. I'm going to screen the questions, and then I'm going to take the questions that have passed that screening stage and present them to the panel. And I've already been reviewing some of the questions that have been presented to me. And so we're going to start with the first one. And I'm starting with this first one because we were just blessed to hear from our leader, our teacher, and our guide. And he talked about this in his most recent lecture to us. So I present the question to the panel, and the first question is, the messenger said we need 8 to 10 states to start. According to the person asking the question, they believe this implies more states will be added. Would you please speak to this statement? Anyone, feel free.
Thank you for the question. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, in the Muslim program, which you will find on the back of every issue of the Final Call newspaper, and you found on the back of every issue of Muhammad Speaks, once he set it up in 1965, comes as a result of questions put to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad by both black and white people. And the question is, what do the Muslims want? Now, I am so grateful to my brother for his presentation, because when you look at the Muslim program at point number 4, he does not limit the request for a separate state or territory to registered Muslims in the Nation of Islam.
That's right.
He defines that population. We want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on this continent or elsewhere. Having placed the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his seat to complete the process of this mission, in the fullness of time, as we stand poised for our exodus, Minister Farrakhan has articulated first to DJ Trump, the President of the United States, and then to the people of the United States, on the 16th of November, 2017, at the Watergate Hotel, that we would take 8 states. We'll take 8 states. Now, we're going to play for you, before this meeting ends, what he stated on July 21st, 2019. See, as we move forward, he releases more specific information and identification of what we are talking about. And it's an excellent question. And yes, we will start moving on one sense slowly, but in another way quickly, toward this establishment. You heard him, if you listen to his message to Cobra in Detroit last month. He mentioned the state of Mississippi. You have heard him speak of Alabama.
That's right.
You have heard him, and everyone hasn't heard him everywhere he speaks. And so it becomes a task now, with the millions of words that have been spoken by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and by his teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the millions of words that things have been said in small and large venues. But we have been made to know that the separate state or territory must include fertile and minerally rich land. We also have been told that we need an outlet to the sea.
That's right.
And so these coastal states, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. Georgia, the birthplace of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and a state soaked with the blood of black people.
That's right. That's right.
And so we will move over a period of time as he gives us specific direction and guidance. Now, very quickly, establish is a term, and he said, to be allowed. Now, when you say allow me, that is a term that is heavily loaded. Because I'm asking you to allow me, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm subordinate to you, or I need your permission.
Come on.
What it is saying to you that if we're going to accomplish this peacefully, I need you to allow me.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Because I'm gonna do it.
That's right.
Now, how can I prove that's what he meant? In no limit of time.
Okay.
Let's parse this number 4, the supreme wisdom, and then of this number 4, and then I'll be quiet. Later, he says in the same point number 4, speaking of the slave masters and of white people, since we cannot, not do not, cannot,
Right. That's right.
get along with them in peace and equality. After giving them 400 years of our sweat and blood and receiving in return some of the worst treatment human beings have ever experienced, we believe our contributions to this land and the suffering forced upon us by white America justifies our demand.
Right. That's right. Come on.
Demand for complete separation in a state or territory of our own.
So moving to the next question, which is one of the most oft-repeated questions that we find in the actual meetings. So, and I'm combining a few questions because they all are very similar in their nature. So, someone wrote, what is the best way to discuss with family friends the project separation and black people separating from the American government? And part B is, when does separation first start? How does that process start?
Again, giving all praise to Allah. The process of separation first begins mentally. Prophet Noble Drawley gives us a teaching. He says, what is the lower self sometimes called? Devil.
Yes, sir.
Says, what does the lower self breed? The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murders, theft, and everything that harms. It says, what people represent the lower self? It says, those that were cast out of the holy city and those that accept their teachings. Okay? So what happens is, the problem with, getting our people to, wrap their minds around separating from their, their oppressor is the fact that they feel tethered to him and they feel like they can't separate. They think they are their oppressor, right? In layman's terms, they've coined this term, Negropean. It's harsh, right? Yeah, because it looks like one of your people. That's right. Until you begin speaking with them.
That's right.
Especially on something that is of a political nature.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When you begin
Yes,
their
sir.
views are like, okay, you aren't one of us. Okay, right. The scriptures speak of a separating of the wheat and the chaff. They use a term called, the threshing floor, which was a place where they used to separate the two.
Yes,
right?
sir.
This gathering here, most gatherings, with trusted organizations that dedicate themselves to nation building, they're somewhat threshing floors, right? We come here, we get the we go over the concepts of what it is, to be on your own. I like to ask, people, are you ready to rule again? Because we've been so used to outsourcing our intelligence to others that we have forgotten what it takes to govern ourselves. That being the case, a lot of work has to be done psychologically. Okay? Because one of the worst things that we could ever do is to separate and bring those that have the mentality of our oppressors into something like that. Because we would implode. We'd be at civil war constantly.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes,
so
sir.
in this interim, while we have time where we find ourselves still, tethered to the American government and so on and so forth, the United States of America Constitution, whatever, let us study what it takes to run a nation. I give honors again to the Nation of Islam, the Moorish Temple of America. The brother mentioned earlier, Brother Yahweh Ben Yahweh with the Nation of Yahweh. These are groups that base themselves on a nation-building concept, right? And every time they gather, they put their monies together and they practice what it was to be on their own. See, if you're not practiced in that, when the time comes for you to be on your own, you won't be able to function, right? Another brief thing, without belaboring the point, I'd like to throw out there: study the creation of the state of Israel. If you study how that was done and how they went about doing that, you will learn a lot. See, again, back to what I was speaking about earlier, sometimes you have to put your emotions to the side, right? If you look, their first sightings for land was not Palestine. It was Uganda. Our brothers in Uganda wasn't going for it. And they set their sights on Kenya. And our brothers in Kenya wasn't going for it, right? Then they set their sights on Palestine, and based on a historical, biblical, and Quranic, thing of, okay, well, you know what, let's let them stay. When they invited them in, that was it. They got the backing of Britain and America, and they've been there ever since. And pushing the Palestinians out day by day. Study one of their architects of that European by the name of Theodor Herzl. He wrote a book called Der Judenstaat, which means the Jewish state. And if you read that, that's their playbook on how they accomplished what they accomplished. Okay? If you read, how he framed it, and you read, the works of Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Garvey, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it reads the same. They were just more vicious in their approach. And they had the backings of some more vicious cats that backed them up in that madness. Okay? So again, I would lend, or I would assert that, clearing the mind state up first, because where the mind goes, the body has to follow. The body should always be the servant of the mind, not the other way around. And with that, I go for it.
I'll just like to say very quickly, we're already separated on unequal.
That's right. That's right.
The ghettos of America, we're already separated.
Come on, right.
What we have to do is follow the teaching of Honorable Farrakhan now and just realize that we're separated. I'm saying to all of us, right now, we must study what the Honorable Farrakhan is teaching us. Now, you see the rise of the police killing us?
Come on now. Say that.
You see what happened, I don't know if you know what happened a few days ago, out in Marietta. The senator, a black senator, a sister, 9 months pregnant, was in the line getting groceries. And she got in that line where it's supposed to be 20 or less. And she had 20, I think it was 24 items. See? Because she's pregnant, she didn't want to stand in that line long. And this Caucasian man called her a black beast. Straight up. And there was no men around that would stand up for her. Because they don't want us to have nothing.
That's right.
And that's real. And they're doing this all over America. In their mind, we're already separate, but unequal.
That's right. Come on.
We have to wake up quick.
Yes, sir.
And realize that, and God, Allah, is moving us in that direction. Did you see what happened last night in Vegas?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You didn't hear? Oh, yeah. The grasshoppers just came all out the sky. You love to Google it. And you can hear the people scared, looking at the one running from the grasshopper. But the Honorable Louis Farrakhan just told us a few days ago.
Yes, sir.
What? After he's been speaking, what was going to start happening?
That's right.
We better wake up, people. The man of God is speaking in our midst. That's all I have to say.
Additionally, quickly, and I'm in 1,000% agreement with my colleagues, my brothers, those of our people that are hesitant and have to hear that white people said it's okay. There are a lot. There are. Read the opening to the Declaration of Independence to them. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. And this has been the work of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, having met with God and received the wisdom of the self-created one from him, and received from him the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to raise us up from a condition of death to a condition of life, that we would know it is time to seek to return to our own.
That's right.
But this is not an aberration. This country started as the result of the disconnect of ties with the British monarchy. It was a separation. And I'll talk more on it tomorrow, but there is no creation without separation. Separation is an integral part of the creative process.
Right.
And so, as Brother Sharrieff just pointed out to us, this treatment of us that persists, that continues, we are segregated into what we call ghettos, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan corrected us and said we are colonized. We live in colonies and clusters of colonies in America. So we are already segregated. 96% of people in this country live with people of their own kind. But we are the only ones that live in a subordinate condition. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad called us a subject people. And so in speaking to our own kind, remember that we are being shown every day that we have no other choice than to go for self. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad warned us, here is what we did wrong. Separation is not new to our people, because Juneteenth, which is when black people in Texas, when the Union troops finally landed on the shores of Galveston, and they found out, I think it was June 19, 1865, that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed 2 years earlier. History records that the majority of slaves immediately left the plantations, though they had nowhere to go. The desire of our parents to distance themselves from these people was so profound that they left immediately. And do you know that what the first thing that the so-called freedmen did in the days in the wake of the emancipation was? We went looking for our families. Our forefathers wanted nothing to do with white folks. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad warned us that integration was not only hypocritical on their part, but that it was a trap.
That's right.
And it was integration that destroyed black business in Atlanta, in New York, in Detroit, in Dayton, Ohio, in Richmond, Virginia, in Tampa, Florida, in Memphis, Tennessee, all of the cities where we live. Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That's right.
The very first time after the invention of the aeroplane, the first time the white white man used them as weapons to drop bombs was not overseas. It was in the continental United States on black people. So if all of that and the coming of God doesn't work for us, then you stay here. We're here to talk to those. We will be signing a petition today.
That's right.
I say lastly, and we have spoken to several thousand black people. We've had black people stand up in these town hall meetings and say, my bags are packed. Just tell me where to go. Now, we will sign a petition. But I say this lastly, we're not going to be isolated. You know, we talk about how bad white people treat us, but when someone says separation, we start to hyperventilate. We're not going to be isolated. We want these states to dominate. We said of our own. Every Chinese person in America does not live in a Chinatown.
That's right.
But they have one. Listen to what I'm saying. Every Italian person doesn't live in a little Italy. Or every German person in a German town. But they have it. Every Jew does not live in Israel. But find me a Jew that doesn't support Israel.
That's right.
We're going to ask you on that petition, when you are given the words to it, we're not saying everybody should come move to Mississippi with us or move to Georgia or Alabama, but we're telling you to support it. And if you agree that it should exist,
That's right. Go ahead.
and that you will support it, don't you know if you want to live in Nevada, you will, or in Idaho, you will be better off if those white people know you got backup.
That's right.
In the black-run governed states of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and so on.
Go ahead.
So tell your family that.
I would say drop the mic, but we have more questions. Praise be to Allah.
Get excited.
Yes, I'm here for you getting excited. I'm grateful for that. I've been reading a lot of the questions, and you know, as black people, we have a lot of knowledge. Prior to us being reintroduced to ourselves, many of us coming into the nation, some of us being birthed, but just being black babies growing up in the home with black mamas, you have a lot of information. Because you have to be taught before you leave the house first not to embarrass her.
That's right. That's right.
So when we attain a lot of knowledge, sometimes we tend to overcomplicate things, right? And so I've been reading some of the questions, and we're a little bit overcomplicating things. So I just pulled up just one example, and then I'm going to move to the next question for the panel. The state of Utah has, according to their July 2016 census, they have 3 million people. Of the 3 million people that live in the state of Utah, 2 million of them are Mormons. So who do we know run the state of Utah?
That's right.
It is simply that simple.
That's right.
Just a little simple. Not that complicated. So with this next question, I'm going to pose to the panel on the tails of that bit of information. Is there an example in history of what we are trying to accomplish with separation? Is there an example that we can think of in history? We just got it. Praise be to Allah. United States. There you go. The next question is, and this is a really important question, I believe. Is religion necessary to build a thriving nation separate from our enemies in the U.S. and throughout the planet Earth? And a part B is, there are black citizens fighting for equality and justice also who have no religious affiliation. do they not deserve asylum?
Jump in real quick. Firstly, what is religion? You know, again, you know, we have a tendency to look at the world through somebody else's lens. You know, relative to, you know, from a Quranic perspective, Islam is your nature.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Islam is not ritual. Islam is not 5 salats a day.
Come on.
Islam is not 30 days of Ramadan.
Come on.
Islam is not Hajj once in your lifetime, right? It is your very nature. Before the rituals came, you were and you had Islam.
Come on now. Yes,
So
sir.
that's first. We have a teaching that says religion is law and law is government, right? In the ancient world, before the European came to dominance, you know, our governments were divine government. They were divine and national, right? If I could just read something real quick from Noble Drew Ali out of the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America. He says, chapter 48, verse 6, he says, instruction 6, we as a clean and pure nation descended from the inhabitants of Africa do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe. Neither serve the gods of their religion.
Good teaching.
Because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers.
Come on.
For their earthly salvation, while we the Moorish Americans are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation.
Yes,
Okay?
sir.
So we have always united the two, right? Show all the scholars that are in the room, show a period of time where we separated them, right? Fragmented thought is a European trait. That's not ours.
Come
right?
on now,
We are
come on.
holistic thinkers. All parts are connected to the whole.
Yeah.
Okay? Again, back to the psychology of things. Okay? And with that, I yield the floor to Sister Dr. Ava Muhammad so she can rock the floor. There you go, sister.
You said it beautifully. You already said it. Islam is not a religion. Islam is a way of life. And again, we want our people in America whose parents or grandparents were descendants from slaves. That's the population we're talking about. Again, the children of Israel who were brought out from under Pharaoh, which that's prophetic, did not have the same, quote, religion. Our brother just laid that out beautifully. We have to work to break from allowing the former slave master to frame issues. This is why the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is so dangerous to their world, because he reframes issues to what they properly are.
Right, right.
He wrote in his monumental study, Self-Improvement, the Basis for Community Development, a study mandatory for the registered Muslims of the nation and a gift to the black community of whomever wishes to partake of it. He wrote that we cannot interpret any set of facts beyond our ability to perceive, our perception, and our interpretation of facts.
That's right.
White people have taken, he said, the fact of their dominance over us to mean that we are inferior.
That's right.
They have taken, they perceive and interpret the fact that they rule over us to mean that they are God over us. The reason that that fact exists is that we are asleep.
Right.
You're not ruling over us because you are superior to us.
Go ahead.
You are ruling over us because we have been asleep.
That's right. Right.
So you have misinterpreted the fact and taken it to an extreme position
That's right.
where you believe that you're God.
That's right.
And you not only are the center of your own existence, you want to be the center of everyone's existence. And there is no link to which but you will not go to force everyone into their position. But now we have awakened from that sleep. And so now you can no longer rule over the darker peoples of the earth. You have to let our people know who are so afraid and take white people as God. God doesn't hate the real God, Allah, God. He doesn't hate white people because they're white.
Right.
He hates them because they're wicked. And if you are black and wicked, you have no place in our states or territory. This is a coming together of the righteous.
Thank you. Thank you both. Our next question is another twofold question. And the question is, in order to separate, will we have to go to war and shed physical blood? Is that what is meant in the restrictive laws when it states, kill no one whom Allah has not ordered to be killed? The second part of the question is, because of our fears of the white man's power, tell us, the children of Israel of this day, what does the mother plane mean to our exodus?
See, I don't want to do all the talking, but just real quick, yes, the mother plane was built in 1929, or I should say it's completed in 1929. And if those who are not familiar with that, come out and join us in the studies here at Mosque number 15 to our meetings. You'll hear about that before we close today. It was built for the express purpose of the destruction of America.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, we will go to war. Yes, there will be physical confrontation, but it has already been said by Student Minister Sharrieff, they're already killing us.
Come on.
We have been in a war since they kidnapped us off the coast of West Africa. We just didn't realize we were in a war. It's been a one-sided war. There was not a war in Africa, it was an invasion.
That's right.
There will be a war, but the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan made it very clear to us, and we know from our teachings, it will be very quick. Very quick. In the twinkling of an eye, because Allah, God himself said, we have suffered enough. So we've been in a protracted state of war. The 450 years here has been the final phase of our redemption.
Right.
From a massive act of rebellion 66 trillion years ago, where we slowly started falling from that point to now. But we are up from that, and all we need to do is accept our own and be ourselves. How can we be afraid when one man, my God, one man, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has singularly stood America on its head and has gone around the entire globe, challenging Satan in his face. And look at him. I'm going to prove to you in no limit of time, in this country, not long ago, when two slaves could not talk to each other without permission and the presence of a white man. When it was against the law for us to read and write, white people would be executed if they were found teaching us to read and write in America. Let me prove very quickly we got back up. October 16, 1995. One black man issued a call for black men then the descendants of those who were prohibited from conversing with each other, from leaving the plantation without a pass. He said, make me at the seat of their government, the greatest military power on the earth.
That's right.
1.8 million black men and boys,
That's right. That's right.
of whom a small fraction, to my earlier question, were Muslim, met him on a Monday. There were no drugs, there was no alcohol, there was no naked women, there was no dancing and partying, there was no gang banging, there was no garbage, there was no trash. It was a holy day of atonement. And white men scattered. The government of the United States shut down. This man here was serving as the supreme captain of the fruit of Islam, of the nation of Islam. All over this country, black women and girls put their husbands, fathers, brothers, sons, grandsons on buses and in cars. My brother-in-law, who is way up in white corporate America, and I never dreamed he got on a bus and rode overnight to hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So don't you dare tell me what they are going to do. They're not going to do a damn thing. That's what they're going to do. Nothing. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and I shut up on this. They asked him, the white man asked the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when will this plane that you keep talking about go into action? He said, the moment you make a move on us, the plane will go into action. So make your move.
I don't know how you can go after that, but you surely
I have no idea. It's very short. I just have one small, humble thought. You know, we're taught that, all questions come from a particular line of thought. To ask and respect to the questioner, but to ask, will there be bloodshed, comes from a position of fear. Most of us who were raised in this country were, raised with a Christian background. Even in the Bible, it states that God never gave you a spirit of fear, right? In the Quran, it says that never be the aggressor. Never be the aggressor. But it says if they attack, this is what Allah says. But if they attack you, you kill them wherever you find them.
That's right. That's right.
Praise be to Allah. Then it says, when they stop, you stop. Because in your execution of justice, you can't become the savage. Okay? So, and again, real quick, we were taught, man cannot die. It's Prophet Noble Jurali, Holy Quran and Moorish Science Temple of America. It says, man cannot die. The spirit man is one with Allah. And while Allah lives, man cannot die. Right? Because this ain't me anyway. It's a vehicle I'm using to get some work done. So if you take this, I ain't gonna do nothing but come back as my grandson. So it ain't no problem at all. So with that, I yield the floor. Slowly.
I just want to say very briefly, Sister Ava was speaking about Million Man March domestically. Maybe you say, well, God, Allah was with the minister in America. But let me take you overseas for a second.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Pharaoh Reagan said, if anybody go to Libya during that time, 10 years in prison, $10,000 fine. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan called a press conference. Mosque, just in case y'all don't know. He stated, I'm a free black man. I go wherever I want to go. And got on a plane and we went overseas. And while we were in Benin, that's Africa, he got a message what America was going to do to Libya. And that Honorable Louis Farrakhan decided that he would go to Libya and warn Muammar Gaddafi. And he sent the delegation back to America. And that's when Brother Collin was Supreme Captain at that time.
Yes, sir.
He told the minister, he said, Brother Minister, let me go to Libya. He was willing to go to prison if that's what it took. The Honorable Louis Farrakhan said, thank you, Brother Collin, but you're not as well known as I am. And I want you and Brother Moose for his son, I want you all to go back to America and go around with the tour, hands off Farrakhan. I'm going, minister talking, I'm going to Libya to warn my brother. And he only took 2 with him. And just so happened by the grace of God, I was one.
Sir.
We went to Libya, and the night we got there, some of you may remember when Honorable Louis Farrakhan said the night that we got to Libya, all of Brother Gaddafi's top aides came to the Honorable Louis Farrakhan's room. And Honorable Louis Farrakhan warned them what America was going to do. And when they finished, they got up and they ran out of the room to tell Brother Gaddafi what the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said. Actual facts. And the minister warned them that they was going to attack their planes and water and blow up infrastructure. And the minister told them, and Brother Gaddafi took his planes out of Libya, put them in Chad, and some of them, he moved. He heard what the Honorable Louis Farrakhan said and obeyed. In the meantime, we was there waiting. And America, most of you don't know this, attacked Libya, and Libya shot down 2 of Americans' planes. But it was broadcast back in America that was 1 shot down, but it was 2. Now, Brother Gaddafi had a lot of women in his military at that time, and they wanted to come and meet Honorable Louis Farrakhan and ask him to pray for them because they was going to the front line. They came to the room, the minister prayed for them, and they went. When they went, then the brothers apparently heard what the sisters did. They wanted the minister to come and pray for them. So when they came, the minister, gracious as he is, he prayed for them, and then they came back later and told the minister that the 2 planes that got shot down, and now they was bracing because they knew America was getting ready to bring it. And we was there. And I'm saying I didn't have as much faith then that I had now. And I'm saying to Celine, the minister was just as calm. I said, Celine, we got to get the hell up out of here. No, I'm just being honest. That's right. The suite that we were in had a big picture window. And Honorable Louis Farrakhan just walked kindly over to the window and he said, out there is the plane somewhere. Just going back to your questions. He said the plane is out there somewhere. And went to his bedroom and closed the door. I said, Celine, We need to get up out of here. We stayed, the minister was so calm, we stayed there for a few more days. And then after a while, that's when Saudi Arabia sent a 747 to pick up the Honorable Louis Farrakhan.
Listen.
And I'm thinking now, they had a plane that was just coming by, stop, pick the Honorable Louis Farrakhan up and keep going. They sent a big 747. And we got on there about, maybe it seemed like to me, about 21 stewardess. That was it. That they sent that big plane to pick up the minister. It wasn't about 4 of us. For the Honorable Louis Farrakhan.
Come on.
Check us.
Yeah, teach that.
The Saudi Arabia. You know, at that time, there was a saying out that we wasn't real Muslims.
That's right. Come on, brother.
But for us not to be real Muslim, Saudi Arabia was like the holiest of cities, sent private plane to pick up the Honorable Louis Farrakhan, which is not a real Muslim to you. And we was to them. Praise be to Allah. Right. They picked him up. We went, put him up in a big suite. Then that next morning we went for a little walk. The minister loved to go for a walk because prison cells go to bedroom. So we went for a walk, and that's when we saw at one of the paper stands, newspaper stands. He said, "Give me one of those papers." That's when we got the paper, and on the front page, now you Google it, front page of the Saudi Gazette. I think that's the name of the paper name, Saudi Arabia. Right. Front page. America was sending one of their most sophisticated airplanes carrier to Libya. And when you check the date, that's the date we were there. But they said it was a bright, shining object that interfered with all the electric equipment on the ship. And they had to turn it around and send it back to Miami.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
That was a plane, just in case you don't know. Then they sent another ship there, and that's when they dropped the bombs and whatever. But I wanted to show you when the minister said the plane was out there somewhere, bearing witness. That's real. The wheel is real, and it backs up the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam. That's a fact. Praise be to Allah. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, that is.
Yes. Very thoroughly. So for the sake of time, because we are running
Yeah, we need.
I think that we have 3 questions that I think are very important that we should at least address. But for the sake of time, I'm going to address 2 separate questions that I think can be answered fairly quickly. One is, how much time do we have to decide to separate? Not long. And the second question is, should the FOI of the nation police our communities? And my answer is, once you've demonstrated the ability to police yourself, then I think the answer is yes, most certainly the FOI should be policing our communities. The next question I'm going to pose, of the final 3 questions that we have, deal with, 1, separation and how they will be governed. So the question is, what will be our first priority after separation, and how will the new state be governed?
I really plan to answer that tomorrow. On Sunday, the lecture's called A Decent Place to Live, because I do want to lay pressure on our minds to go ahead and move. And I know that one impediment to the idea of separation is that this is some sort of aberration. And we're not able to see how this can happen. But I would just say, as a prelude to tomorrow, if you understand the structure of the U.S. government and the structure of look at what it's called, the United States
Right. Go ahead.
of America. a political union of 50 independent sovereign states, each with its own flag,
That's right. That's right.
each with its own constitution. And that's all I'm going to say on that.
Yes, ma'am.
But the way in which we govern ourselves will come from, as my brother spoke about earlier, we were created in a nature that makes us submissive to the will of Allah, that makes us predisposed and inclined to live in peace. But we already know how to govern, and you're going to see a clip from the minister briefly. I'm not going to do a closing because I've talked all day. But this is basically my closing. I want to say on the issue of policing and the FOI, we'll deal with that tomorrow too. That yes, the fruit of Islam are the military protection of the black nation. All right, and yes, our communities will be policed by the fruit of Islam. But to Sister Rona's point about self-policing, I think you're talking more in the sense of beginning to behave and conduct ourselves in our homes and in our individual behavior a certain way. When a few of us do that, then you and I become entitled to have protection in that. It doesn't take a lot. We do this block by block. That's how the white man pushed back up in what we thought was our neighborhood. He did it block by block. And now you look up and Harlem is white. Okay? And so just like the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's development is a reverse of the process of making the black man into a Negro, the Minister Farrakhan's life and development is the process of making a Negro into a God. We are going to reverse that process and bring about black gentrification. Black gentrification. Thank you very much. Brother Sharrieff.
I just want to speak one part about the FOI policing community. Now, that's a reality, by the grace of God. Just past week or two, up at the AU Center, they invited me to speak to all administrators and police chiefs. When I got to run with the CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, all of them. And I wasn't expecting that, but I thought we were going to speak to the chiefs of police from around the country of all colleges. But I was prepared by the grace of God, because Honorable Louis Farrakhan had already prepared us, because at the Million Man March, by the grace of God, I was able to speak to all law enforcement agencies in America, because they had them there for the Million Man March. That's when they were prepared to kill us on that mall.
I got a charge in the interim.
The HBC, the chief of police invited me to speak, and I said, because following Honorable Louis Farrakhan's instruction, when there was shooting, they was killing some of the students up at the college, all on TV.
TC, that's
They
right.
was robbing the students. Therefore, we went up there. Yes, sir. They didn't invite us. Come on, guys. We went up on our own. And Allah, God blessed us. The crime went all the way down. We worked for 24 hours up there. Yeah. And by the grace of God, Honorable Louis Farrakhan told us, don't go looking for money. That's right. Go do the work. Do the work. And the money will come. By us doing that, by the grace of God, that's why the chief of police invited us to come and speak. And when I spoke by the grace of God, I said to them, I said, now, do you remember the Million Man March? That's right. I said, it was not one incident. Right. At all. And I said to them, now all of you all carry weapons. I said, don't make your weapons your God. Because Honorable Farrakhan taught us Because between your finger and the trigger is a lot of God.
That's right.
Now the white folks in the room were looking. They were shocked. I said, and what happened at the Million Man March that you all, I said, you FBI, you all was there. CIA, you was there. Homeland Security, you was there. I said, but what you didn't calculate in that march was God. And all the black people, yes. See, because we got God in us. And then when I finished speaking by the grace of God, the president from Prince George's County came up to me, look, we need your contact with the Muslims in Maryland now, because we're going to open up the college campus. Orangeburg, South Carolina was there. He said, we're going to open up our campus to the Muslims from this city. By the grace of God, the university is going to open up again for the Muslims that follow Uncle Louis Farrakhan from this city by the grace of God. That's the FOI work. That's real. Praise be to Allah. Thank you.
Thank you. That's right. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you our petition. This is the reason why we're here. So you'll see on tables, on clipboards, this petition. The purpose of this petition is that we want our people who are descendants of slaves and who desire to live a righteous life to be allowed to establish a separate state or territory of their own, either on their continent or elsewhere. Our former slave masters and their children are obligated to provide that land, which should be minerally rich and fertile. We believe they are obligated to maintain and supply our needs in this separate territory for 20 to 25 years. We're all familiar with this language, correct? Until we are able to meet our own needs. We receive no peace after giving the best of us for 400 years and receiving in return some of the worst treatment ever recorded by any people. Our contributions to this land and suffering at the hands of white America justifies a complete separation in a state or territory of our own. So right now, what I would like for everyone to do is to pull out your cell phones, and we're gonna have you text the word separate to 31996. Again, you're gonna text the word separate, SEPARATE, to the number 31996. And what that does is, that allows you to join the same movement electronically via your cell phone, and what you'll do is start to receive updated text messages from the Project Separation team as it relates to the next steps in this process. Yes, sir. The number is 31996. 31996, and you're going to text the word separate. Again, I'm going to briefly describe what you're going to be signing so that you are very clear and we can make sure that we expedite the process as quickly as possible. You're going to print your name, and then next to your name, you're going to sign it. Then you're going to put your address and your city, your zip code, and your phone number. Then you're going to check the box whether or not you would like to receive text messages. However, if you've already texted to the 31996, you can just go ahead and check that box here. You'll add your email address. The next column is your skill or education, and then any comments. So there's two last lines, and it just is saying, by you checking these two lines, number one, by signing this petition, I'm declaring my desire to follow the law of God, or simply offer my support of those who do. Furthermore, this is a formal declaration that I intend to separate or support those who intend to separate from white America by establishing a new land under God with freedom, justice, and equality for all, regardless of race, creed, class, or color. You will also be registering to be a voting member of the justice political machine. Okay? So that's what these last two columns are. You'll simply check both boxes And that's what you are communicating when you check those boxes. We have a 4-minute video that's already queued up of the minister that we're going to be playing, and then after that, we'll be closing out in prayer. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
I say to President Trump, God is punishing America for what you've done to black, brown, and red people, particularly the black, that God is after, and you won't let them go. Now, if, Mr. President, you reasoned with what he asked, we need 8 to 10 states. Don't take nothing out of it. Just move out yourself. We can run cities, we can run states, we can run any corporation. We know something about everything. So all of you that are with the movement to get our people registered to vote, I say speed it up. But you gotta vote with a vision in mind. Come on. If we learn how to vote, and you say we want 8 to 10 states, and we are becoming the majority in a lot of states, particularly in the South, that has agricultural land that is fertile and minerally rich with an outlet to the sea.
That's right.
Just with the power of the vote, our being prolific baby makers,
Prolific.
soon you can run the state just with the power of the vote. You ain't killing nobody, ain't robbing nobody, just exercising what they say we could do. Many of you go to law school and you're coming out and you're brilliant. We can run the law of a state. We can run courts. We know how to be good sheriffs. We know how to be good policemen. We have over 400,000 of us in the armed forces of America. Whatever land we have, we know how to protect it. But Mr. Trump, you have to see that that's in the interest of America's future. Not to make you great again, because you've never really been great in a righteous way. You felt great because of how you took the land of the native people. You felt great because you brought millions of us over here and made us slaves. You felt great because you brought the Chinese in to lay your railroad tracks and other things. You felt great because white power was in effect. But America, you can truly become great. But righteousness has to be the cornerstone of your greatness, and justice for the black man and woman has to be a part of Your plan, Mr. President,